vote on the dollar, the amendment?
Yeah.
No, we did.
We did?
They raised the bottom line by $1.
Oh, but we didn't
Not
vote
for
on
the
it.
91A.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
All right. Brings us now to Article 3, Water System Budget. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $163,075 for general water system operation. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by water usage fees. Is there a motion? So move the article, and Paula seconds it. This is the breakdown, which you have in front of you. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I think it's in that slide after that. So really, the only change in the water budget for this coming year is that we're going to have to start paying back principal and interest on a loan that was taken out in 2018. So in 2018, there was a loan appropriated for up to $204,920. That was to do inspection and lining on the water tanks. In 2018, we spent $64,309 of that money on inspection and lining of tanks. And in 18, we only paid interest. In 2019, we appropriated the balance of that money for upgrading the electrical pump houses. DPW 1 got a complete overhaul, the Summit pump house, and the Chicora View pump house. So those 3 tanks, we spent $77,583, and we paid interest only. So this upcoming year, in addition to the $5,000 that we're going to be paying in interest, we're going to be paying another $12,000 in principal. So that's really the only major increment to the water budget. Everything else is based on the cost of water treatment and testing and repairs and electricity and all of that other good stuff that was on that prior slide. That's really why there's a little bump in the water budget, because we now have to start paying back the principal on that loan. Any questions on that?
Any questions? No? Okay. Ready to vote?
Thank you.
And again, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $163,075 for general water system operation. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by water usage fees. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Bringing us to Article 4, paving of Chicora View Drive. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,100 for the purpose of reclaiming and paving Chicora View Drive. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Jay, and seconded by Paula. Jay, are you up?
Yep. So, does everybody know what Chicora View Drive is? Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. You don't want to go there. The road's in pretty rough shape, and it's got some pretty good usage on it. It's been patched over the years, but there's really no hope for it at this point. The base of the road is not a good base, and the asphalt is basically sliding down the hill. So Kelly, our DPW manager, worked with our paving contractor of choice, and we got this quote for $37,100. That is to reconstruct and put a base coat down on the road. The top coat, or what is known as the wear coat, will come in later years. And again, that will be slid in as appropriate when we have other warrant articles that aren't as expensive. But we have up to basically 5 years in which to use the base coat before putting the wear coat down. Kelly, do you want to say
That was
anything?
perfect. That's
Okay.
just right. What they're putting, it's called a winter binder. It's a stronger binder as the base coat to give us extra years. We're looking at some other paving projects. I'd like to incorporate this with doing the lower section of West Bergamo and adding that. I can get better prices with bigger projects. So, like Jay said, it's not going to be next year. We're going to be looking at doing Idlewild the year after that, probably 2022, and probably 2023 we'll be coming back to put a wear coat over the top. So that's the plan.
Any further discussion, questions? No? Nope. Dinah?
Yes, I heard the commissioners say our preferred paver. I was wondering if we put these out to bids at all, so we can see if we have the best price.
I have in the past. This was the best bid. We've had this bid for 2 years now, I think, maybe longer, but it got adjusted. It went up $1,000 this year from last year. So this has been in the works for a while. We had numerous calls out, but not many people show up. They don't, if you know Chicora Hill, nobody really wants to do it. It's a huge liability. But I think 2 years ago, we had 2 bids, this being one of them. And we've had some dealings with other paving companies that I'd rather not go to again. This one's a good one. They're giving us a really good price. So that's why I push for them.
They did a good job on the winter road, on the roads on Bristol Stock and Aspen,
Yeah.
so they did a great job up there.
And they're coming back Tuesday, if anybody's wondering, to resurface some damage we had from plowing. So, and that's free of charge. So they're very good to work with. And even if you appropriate the money, it doesn't have to go to them, I don't believe. It just goes to paving that road.
One other question. I wasn't sure where Chicora View was either, so I drove it. And the first part of it isn't too bad. So are we going to do the whole thing?
We are going to do the whole thing. It's a matter of a couple of years before you're going to have to do that too. It wouldn't make sense to chop it up into sections. When they start grinding a road up, they want to go from gravel to gravel or gravel to the end. I asked the same thing, and for the amount of payment we wouldn't be replacing, it didn't make sense. It just, by the time they had to skip over that section to get to the other section, logistically wise, it probably would have been a higher estimate on the job. But we have that too many places. We have 30 feet of new stuff. We have 60 feet of old stuff, another 10, 2 chopped up. We're going to do 1 complete road, start to finish, and then we sit back and we have a lot of years before we have to worry about any of that road again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Let me read it again. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,100 for the purpose of reclaiming and paving Chicora View Drive. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Article 5, brush and tree cutting. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the purpose of brush and tree cutting along roadways throughout the village district. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. Is there a motion? Kathy, seconded by Jay. Jay, are you good?
Yeah. So this is something that for some of you may seem to be a new item. Actually used to be done on a regular basis. We have saplings that are growing up on the sides of our roads. Saplings eventually become trees. Trees then become roadblocks for our snow plowing efforts. So this is really to go in, identify those trees which have become problematic for our snow plowing, as well as our road. Remove those trees and basically in some areas start to do brush cutting. It's not going to cover the entire district. That'd be a figure that's a lot higher than this, but it's really to get the main problematic trees and get in areas where there's heavy brush growing now that will soon become trees to get them out of the way of our plows. Any questions?
Any questions? Dinah.
Does this include the really big trees sometimes that like are along Little Shore?
That'd eat up this whole thing. If we did 1 tree on Little Shore, that would be the whole 7,000. That wasn't my intention. My intention was roadside brush cutting, because the visibility is getting bad. We can't keep up with cutting little sticks here and there. I had the roadside mowing company that does the state highways come in and do a drive-through and give that estimate. He said 7,000 is a good kick, but we should get on a yearly basis, do a certain amount of cutting until we can get to a point of maintaining. But I guess before my time, like Jay said, you did have it in the budget. I think it was 4,000, or before my time, in your yearly budget to maintain the roadsides. So I don't think we're asking for anything that hasn't been done in the past.
I think in the past our highway crew has done a lot of that too. so it wasn't an added expense.
Well,
I agree.
we do a certain amount, but it's ridiculous to try to keep up with what's growing out there. It's just, we can't.
Can you tell me what the main roads are that are a problem?
We were going to start on what we call the right side of Idlewise, which would be Gretchen, Jungfrau, Upper Aspen, that area, down Bristenstock and that section, because once they start cutting, they don't really want to jump from this road up to the top of Oak, because it is hourly. It is, the more time they spend, the more we pay. So I was going to cut it up into the worst sections and tackle that, and then every year till we get the whole district to where it should be.
So we should expect this as a yearly expense, I'm hearing.
It won't be $7,000 expense. That's just to get a good kickstart.
Okay.
I don't believe it would be the $4,000 that it used to be. I think we can come in under that, but I'm just projecting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Well, let me read it again. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the purpose of brush and tree cutting along roadways throughout the village district. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Lodge property changes. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 for the surveying and revisions to the property lines in anticipation of property sale in the future. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation.
So moved.
And seconded. Jay? Okay. Who's speaking? Jay? On this?
So, this is going to be fun. There have been discussions in the past about the lodge building itself. There's been repairs and some renovations made to it over the past few years. And unfortunately, this year we had the pandemic, and until today, really, we really couldn't gather together, so the lodge was really underutilized this year. But in looking at years past and how much utilization it actually gets, it's a building that can only be used really during the warmer months. It's not winterized. The pipes underneath would freeze. So we have limited use of the building, and the building is coming up for more need of repairs. Basically a new roof within probably the next 5 years. And again, you're really only looking at about 6 months of use at most out of this building. So the question's been raised, possibly could we sell this building? And I think most of you know what real estate is like right now. It's on fire. And that building, in its current condition, could result in quite a bit of money if it were sold as is. The problem is, when you look at this lot that this building is on, under the Madison tax maps, it's including the building which is called the Old Cabana, which currently houses the electronics for the communications tower that the Sheriff's Department uses for repeating their 911 signals. So we don't want to sell the Cabana and Lodge together, as well as the Sheriff's sophisticated equipment. They wouldn't like that. So the purpose of this particular article is just simply to get the Lodge subdivided through a boundary line adjustment onto its own property. And that's simply what it is to get it isolated, so that if this voting body, at some point in time, through a public hearing or whatever it may be, decides it's time to sell the lodge, we're ready to go. So we went out for a couple of quotes. We got one that was $10,500, and then we got a recent one that was $6,000 through Briggs Engineering over in Conway. So that's the cost of doing a boundary line adjustment, because there's several permits that have to be pulled because of the topography on this lot. It's very steep in the back. We would not be including the scenic vista with this property. That we would keep with the Cabana. Any questions? Mike?
Mike?
I don't have any questions. Well, I do. I would think that you would want to include where the septic system is in the site review. I don't know if you got enough money in it to do that, which would mean that you probably would have to get a plumber to put a scope out to find where the septic system is. Nobody knows where that is. That's number one. Number two is the commission has had the authority to sell without it going to voters.
Correct. We don't want to...
You know, it doesn't have to go to the body to be, we sold the tennis courts that way without going to the voters years ago. So that's another thing. It might be advantageous for the commissioners to get this work done. The market is booming like it is. Put it up on the market right away, because in a year's time, you don't know what that market's going to be. You don't know if you're going to have the demand that that building could give you in dollars. So I guess my question is, the septic system, should we add money to the septic system to get it, to find out where it is?
That's a great question. Actually, that is covered in this quote.
It is covered?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm good.
Because that is the reason it's prompting 2 permits that might have to be pulled from DES in regards to if the new owner ever decides to relocate that septic system.
Would that be up to the new owner to worry about that?
It is, yeah. But we'll have that information when we go to the, if we decide, you as a voting body, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we said we would not ever sell that building without first going to you.
At least have a public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
So that we could get input from the public. And we've talked to people in the district, one-on-one, and it seems that the prevailing thought is to sell it. But I think just for, again, transparency's sake, we would have a public hearing so that everybody would know that this is what we're going to be doing. And that's just a 30-day notice. So once we hire the surveyor, we'll have a little bit stronger timeline so we could be prepared to list it immediately.
I see a hand. Holly? Holly?
Okay. If you redo that lodge, where does the public parking go? Because I know that that section up on the top there has been used for public parking for overflow in that area. So does all of that go away?
That's in the survey.
And what about a driveway for it? The district, when it was plowed, would make a loop through there and plow that so that cars could park there in the winter. So is it going to then automatically be a turnaround where that person gets their driveway paid for by the district to plow? I guess because I live there and because I have used that parking lot for excess, because we don't have a driveway really, and you can't really, where we live, you can't really park on the road too well.
So they won't have a driveway either, so they'll be parking right next to you. So we did talk about the driveway issue, that if somebody did purchase it and did winterize it and did have cars there during the winter time, it's going to be part of this lot line adjustment to figure out exactly where that property boundary will be. So we'll have some input on that.
We may include basically parking enough for 2 vehicles. Or you could actually give the homeowners an easement to that parking lot for 2 spaces.
Yeah, Stan Wondolowski, question, we never designated that as a public parking area. I don't know why it's an issue.
It's always been designated.
Maybe not
It's
officially.
it's village property. I don't think there's restrictions anywhere to park, right? Except in the winter on the road?
It was a parking lot. It was an extra parking space at the top of the hill for parking.
It might become a challenge. Might have to get Kelly involved to figure out, just as far as the plowing and go, how that's going to work. It's going to be challenging.
All that asphalt's junk up there,
I
that's
know
why
it.
we don't,
It is, it's falling apart.
Yeah, it is, but it still is a place to park.
Ron?
Yeah, I just want to say, I fully support this motion going forward. I think it's prudent for the district to look at selling the property and potentially getting the lot lines adjusted for it. Year over year, we spend money into it. It's a very small population that goes in there. The district has other needs. And for all of you who don't know it, we don't have a handicapped accessible office. So we may actually be at some point forced to do something in a short order. And I won't even talk about that at this time. We'll talk about it when it comes in. Talk about selling it. But I'm in favor of it. I think it's smart to do.
That means you're going to raise your hand
Mike-
really, really
Mike,
high. Really,
Do you
really
have anything more to add, Mike?
thank you,
You had
Mark.
your hand up, yep.
Is the plan to hire an engineer to do this boundary line adjustment is what it sounds like it has to be done?
Yes.
Well, the surveyor. Yeah,
So
surveyor.
so you're gonna have an engineer do it, do a plot plan, and do a boundary line adjustment, and take it to the zoning board, I'm assuming that's where it's gonna end up going to the town.
Planning board.
Am I correct in that, or?
Planning board.
Planning board, he said.
Huh?
Planning board.
Planning board, okay.
Stan?
Yeah, as part of the survey and the question of parking for, let's say, the individual or individuals that purchase that property, I think the property line should include a parking area for that lodge, so that there is not a parking issue as to who should be parking where.
There'd be a deeded location.
Yeah.
Specified for their parking.
Yeah, because we all have it for our own individual properties.
Okay.
So noted. Now, one other comment, though,
Yep.
and I know we want to hurry on you, but if we sell the lodge, we have to find a solution for all that material that belongs to the district that's in that lower level. So whether we're going to have to build a storage building, we're going to have to put a metal trailer or something somewhere, even temporarily. But so there's going to be expenses that'll be coming out of the proceeds to store all of that material. It's got to be the safe, dry location. That's all of our, 50 years of historical paperwork is up there. So just a comment that will be coming.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 7, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 to purchase a new leaf blower which will be mounted on the backhoe. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. The motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, Jay?
I got this one too. If anybody noticed this past spring, when the ditches were cleaned of the leaves that collected over the fall, there was a leaf blower that was utilized to do that. It was I'll call it a ride-on, sort of like one of those power mowers that you stand on these plates and you just simply swivel around with it. The blower that's proposed here is very similar to that, but far more versatile in that you'll be able to angle the blower head into the ditch line. And a lot of our ditches of new roads that have been constructed, for example, the lower section of Oak Ridge, have what is called a riprap stone swale. The stone is meant to slow down the erosion and capture the water basically as it's going down to stop as much erosion as possible. Unfortunately, it also collects leaves in the fall. And anybody want to try to clean one of those ditches out between those boulders that are about 6 inches in size, it's a task. So you could probably see if the blower was actually brought on your road, I know it was brought on my road, the efficiency that it has in cleaning out these new ditch lines that we're lining properly, finally, with the proper stone, which is usually a 6-inch Class C riprap. That's the purpose of getting it. We really don't have any other tool that efficiently cleans the ditches. And Kelly, if I didn't cover anything, if you have anything else.
Every year, we rent a blower from Coleman's usually, and
When we can.
it's undersized. We have limited days to use it. You ever seen us driving with this little thing hooked on the back of the dump truck? It blows leaves off the road, but it doesn't do the ditches. We spend most of our springs using the grader to kind of sweep all the leaves out of ditches that the blower would have blown out. We wouldn't have that job to do. It would be a great thing. This blower I'm proposing, we've been kind of waiting for something like this. For many years, I've been trying to get one. This is a new type of blower. It's called a turbine, but it has a pivotal head. So the way we're going to have it is it's going to be attachment for our backhoe. So we can bring the backhoe and we can move the bucket up or down, the blower up or down to get into a ditch. And it's kind of a pivotal head on it. So no more shooting leaves up people's driveways, no more shooting them back on their lawns. We had to, in the past, what we'd do is speed up when we got to a driveway. It was ridiculous. And we'd get complaints, and I understood them. But this will alleviate most, I'm not saying we're not going to get a few leaves, but the hassle involved with blowing leaves, especially in a district that's canopied by oak trees, and oak trees are the last ones to fall in the fall. We usually don't get to them, and then they get covered in snow, and then in the spring, you've got to try to do it in the spring, and you have matted down leaves, and it's a challenge. That's why when they get matted down, now they're interfering with our ditches, and we have to grade them and ditch them back out. It's a lot of work for something that we could alleviate. Having this that could mount on our backhoe means we don't have to buy a motor for it. The one we drove around that Jay's talking about was a $14,000 machine because it had a motor, it had all that. This will run through our hydraulics on our backhoe. It was a great find. Tamworth has one. Ossipee has something similar. A lot of towns are picking up on this. We had a deluge of pine cones this year, if anybody noticed. We had to go around in the spring, which we try not to do because it's hard to blow the leaves, but the pine cones, we could not grade a road. That's why our grading came kind of late this year, because the pine cones, we had to wait for the blower to be available to get the blower to pine the pine. I think you know what I'm talking about. But this would alleviate a lot for a 2.5-man crew to have to hand blow the roads, which we did a lot of this year. This would help. This would be like a new employee with no insurance.
Any questions or comments? Okay, yes, Holly.
What happens to the leaves? Where do they go? If they don't go onto somebody's lawn?
Back in the woods, or we can blow them down the road and up into the woods, or this will also blow up a culvert, because you can turn it and position it at the culvert head, and you can blow right through the culvert. This leaves, we're not eating the leaves. We're not going to mulch them. They're getting blown back up where we always did, just not so much in people's yards.
Okay, so you're not going to have to put them in the road and then pick them up?
No. We're going to blast them back up in the woods and let them mulch, and Mother Nature will eat them up.
Okay, all right, I'll read it once more before we vote. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 to purchase a new leaf blower, which will be mounted on the backhoe. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 8, Tank Pumping Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to establish a waste tank maintenance capital reserve fund for the purpose of the removal of hazardous waste from the DPW tight tank. The Board of Commissioners are agents to expend these funds. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. Is there a motion?
Motion. Seconded.
You want to speak on this too?
Yes, so this is something that probably nobody's really seen except for just a few people here. It's called a tight tank. Basically what it is, it's a septic holding tank. It sits outside our DPW garage number 1 down on Route 113. The problem that we've had in the past, as anybody should know, our main well for our drinking water system is just about 150 feet away from those front doors of that garage. We cannot wash the vehicles down there, we cannot change oil, we cannot do maintenance on them. That's why we have to send everything out. We need to protect that water source. We are in a protective radius of 4,000 feet. The problem is when those trucks come back from fighting snow and spreading salt to melt the ice and snow, that snow that's left on the truck that may have fallen on top of it begins to melt inside the heated garage. That then turns into water, and that water used to sit on the floor of the garage, and in some cases as deep as 7 or 8 inches.
Oh yeah, we had good 7 inches.
Yeah, good place to go swimming. So what you've done in years past is you appropriated money for an engineer to come out and design a tight tank, which has been installed this past year, and that tank is now receiving the water drippings that come in off of the salt trucks, basically. That material is considered hazardous waste. And even if it wasn't hazardous waste, you wouldn't want that to be around your wellhead. So this tight tank is now collecting and will be filled when it reaches 5,000 gallons of hazardous waste water. It needs to be removed as hazardous waste. So we've gotten some figures on what it would cost to basically pump out a 5,000 gallon tank with hazardous waste, that being salt, contaminated water. This appropriation of $2,500 this year does not cover the full cost, which is about $4,000 to $5,000, but it's a start. What we're doing is we want to create this capital reserve fund so that when the alarm on that tank goes off telling us it's full, the commissioners will have this reserve fund in which to go ahead and call a company to come and pump that tank out. So that's what this is all about. It's also about protecting your drinking water source.
Any questions? I'll read it again to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to establish a waste tank maintenance capital reserve fund for the purpose of the removal of hazardous waste from the DPW tight tank. The Board of Commissioners are agents to expend these funds. Funding for this appropriation will be raised by taxation. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 9, Replenished Medical Insurance Trust. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be deposited into the Medical Insurance Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of mitigating the impact of health plan changes or unforeseen increases in our health care plan costs. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. So motion? A move?
So moved.
Second. Jay, you up again, or?
No.
I thought you were, I'd be happy to talk to it. Yeah, I mean, the reason, we already have a I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. We already have a medical insurance capital reserve fund. It was established several years ago. I don't even know the history of it, but it has been pretty much depleted. There's a few dollars in it. But we wanted to bring this back and to fund it because one of the things we're finding is this variance and increases over time in the medical insurance costs for our employees. And we also don't know who our employees are going to be in the future and which plan they're going to opt into. So now that we have offering a full family plan in the future, we want to be able to, in case more people tap into it, if we budget for the insurance at the beginning of the year, and then for some reason we get a new employee who wants to be in the family plan and we haven't put that in the budget, we'll be able to tap into this reserve account to cover the cost for that full plan potentially for a new employee. And also, I think just thinking about the future, medical insurance costs continue to escalate. So we think this is an important fund to contribute money to. And we're funding it from the unassigned fund balance that I talked about earlier. The fact that we're putting it in there for savings. If at a certain point the money's not spent, it can always be moved somewhere else with a vote. But we think it's a good idea to have some money in reserve for sort of unforeseen costs that may come during the course of a year when money wouldn't be budgeted.
Ron?
Very quick, since this district has to budget for people to be on health insurance.
Sure.
And I understand we have one employee who hasn't opted into the family plan, which means there's this $5,000 difference.
Right.
That's the perfect reason to use that fund. That's why it was established, is for those people who weren't taking medical insurance funds, and we had to collect the money anyway to cover the cost, to be able to save for future and offset costs. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be deposited into the medical insurance capital reserve fund for the purpose of mitigating the impact of health plan changes or unforeseen increases in our health care plan costs. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, moving along. Replenished Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is very similar to the capital reserve fund that we just talked about for medical insurance. Again, the appropriations that come from the unassigned fund balance, so this is not going to impact your tax rate this year. Currently, we have $106.42 in our capital reserve for the purchase of a new truck. I don't know if anybody knows about prices of new trucks, but $106 may not even buy you a tire. So what we're asking, and these funds have been, a lot of these funds have been depleted over the years and not replenished. And since there was so much savings in this year's budget, what we want to do is take those savings and start to build these reserve funds back up. Now the plan, going to asset management, the plan I believe was to purchase a new large dump truck in 2022, which would be next year. We just did some work on that large international dump truck. We believe we might get an extra year out of it. But in replacing that large international 6-wheel dump truck, you're probably looking at, with a 4-wheel drive, you're probably looking at about $200,000 for the cost of that vehicle. So this is just seeding the cost so that when it comes time to purchase that truck, we will take from this reserve fund and whatever else may already be in there or added next year and raise taxes to complete that purchase.
Mike?
Can I correct something? You said that 200,000 is probably more like 300,000.
It could be.
We got a price on 4-wheel drive dump truck back a couple of years ago, and it was close to 200,000 then. And we budgeted some money, and we didn't even have enough money when we budgeted to buy that 4-wheel drive truck. I think I was one of the commissioners that bought that truck there, and we knew because we couldn't afford some. That's why we bought just a regular truck like that. And it's paid for itself, even though it isn't 4-wheel drive. Our goal was to put chains on it and keep it on flats. And it's powerful enough to do that. I think you're looking at 300,000 plus to buy a 4-wheel big truck.
And you may be correct.
Are you amending this to increase?
No.
I'm just checking.
But the purpose, Mike is correct.
No, wait,
The purpose is,
But that's not relevant.
it's not relevant. The purpose is to basically have some money set aside.
I understand what you're doing. But I just wanted to correct your number because I know it's wrong.
Ron?
Just real quick, I totally support this motion. My concern is take the 95 away from the 350 estimated unassigned fund balance puts us, and we took another 33 out of the unassigned fund balance, so it's really 128,000 out of the unassigned fund balance. 350 number puts it below what you're going to need to support for your cash flow through the year. We will need the 10 loan should we do this. That was this part. So just as a FYI, we're going to drop the unassigned fund balance pretty dramatically as a result of this, but it is savings going forward. I will say that the greater loan comes up in, I think it's 2 years, and that's probably the appropriate time.
To think about.
24, I think it is. It's 23, even better. And that's the appropriate time to swap the greater loan with the loan to buy the big truck, and it'll even be lower. So just a thought for you, but I'm concerned about unassigned fund balance now starting to get lower when we're working with an estimated number.
The legislative body did vote to take another $33,000 out of that, so we hadn't kind of planned for that, so thank you.
We're looking at 125.
I still think we're putting more, taking less out than we put into the unassigned fund balance this year. And the unassigned fund balance was pretty healthy at the end of last year. So I agree with you, but I think we'll... I think we're in pretty good shape, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Article 11, Replenish Equipment Repair Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be deposited into the Equipment Repair Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. Is there a motion? Jay?
Seconded.
So this article, very similar to the one prior, we have reserve funds for such things as truck repairs. And as you can see, currently we have a balance of $1,732.55. That doesn't really repair very much at all. So what we're trying to do is replenish this in case we have an incident with one of our trucks, such as if a transmission blows or we have to rebuild the rear end. The budget right now is pretty tight, so this will give us a reserve fund that, again, will come out of unassigned fund balance money, no taxation raised, to be able to allow the commissioners to go and have that truck repaired. And it's extremely important to have that ability, especially in the middle of the winter when snowstorms come and go every other week. So.
And I will say, we had a very fortunate year with the DPW, this 2020 budget year. I mean, nothing really failed. I think the DPW crew went above and beyond, stepped up, helped with repairs, helped with the tight tank, found a better guy to do the garage door work. So, I mean, we were just very lucky that we saved as much money as we did last year. So, keeping our fingers crossed this coming year that we don't experience any of these major problems, but, you know, who knew we were going to have a $16,000 grader repair the year before. So I think it's important that we do have that fund funded.
Yeah, so just to be clear, there is a line item in the operating budget that's been approved that has for repairs. This is really when you have those big, you know, just unexpected kind of things that, like we had the $16,000 repair a couple of years ago. So there is money already allocated in the operating budget for repairs. This is not for everyday repairs, but this is for some, when we get up kind of above and beyond and we need some extra funds there.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be deposited into the Equipment Repair Capital Reserve Fund. Funding for this appropriation will be raised from the unassigned fund balance. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, next. Reclassify section of Reinhardt Place. To see if the village district will vote to reclassify to Class 5 a portion of the Class 6 section of Reinhardt Place from the southerly corner of the driveway at number 5 Reinhardt Place for a distance of 350 linear feet to just beyond the post gate for the Reinhardt tank.
So moved.
And seconded, Jay.
So this is more or less a legal cleanup motion. There's no money involved here. As you know, we just constructed a new water tank with a new pump station outside of that water tank. If you look at the delineation of our roads, where the new tank and the new pump house are built are on Class 6 roads. And technically, the district is not allowed legally to maintain those roads. So what we're asking is that we reclassify the delineation from Class 6 to Class 5 so that our DPW can maintain these roads. And it's just beyond the post. It's about 350 feet in length, just beyond the post at where the new tank is. There's a yellow chain that goes across, and that's where the gate is. So it's pretty simple. It's for plowing. The trucks can turn around there. And it's made everything nice and safe, and we can still get to the buildings if we need to.
Any questions? Yes, Dinah.
There's a new home built up there past this delineation, as you say, I think. So this would not include that new home.
Yes, it would.
He's almost directly across from the pump house.
Yeah.
I know where he is.
Okay, so I mean, if it's going beyond the pump house to the outside of the
It's gotta
tank,
come that road.
it does cross in front of his property. Not all of his property, but some of it.
Okay, so the 350 feet would go up to his home.
They go well past his home. Actually, for the
Beyond
plow
his
purpose of
driveway.
plowing, Kathy and I were taking a look at the drawings yesterday, and it looks like there's about 34 feet of his property that is on from where,
It's all Class 6.
yeah, it's all Class 6, even to where the old pump station is today. So yeah, I wouldn't know exactly what that measurement is, the corner of his property, but it's probably around 200 feet.
Yeah, I mean, we have an access to that new tank that we
Yeah.
have to get to, so that's,
Well, that's the
we have
purpose.
to, we have to reach that far, so we have no choice but to go that far.
Right.
Lucky him.
Yeah.
He did, he lucked out.
Any other questions? Okay, to see if the village district will vote to reclassify to Class 5 a portion of the Class 6 section of Reinhardt Place from the southerly corner of the driveway at number 5 Reinhardt Place for a distance of 350 linear feet to just beyond the post gate for the Reinhardt tank. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Reclassify section of Adelboden. To see if the village district will vote to reclassify to Class 5 a portion of the Class 6 section of Adelboden Way from the boundary line of lots F97 and F98 to the boundary line of lots F98 and F99 to accommodate snow removal. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Jay, you want to talk to this?
This is a very similar article to the one you just voted on. This is on Adelboden Way. The DPW, a few years ago, maybe, constructed a cul-de-sac.
Oh, that's been there.
It's been for a while.
Been there before my time, which is...
On the Class 6 section of Adelboden Way, which is right across from Lot F99. This is for the vehicles that turn around during snow plowing operations. Anybody that's ever done snow plowing, backing up is, especially when you don't have a rear view mirror, you only have side mirrors, is not an easy thing to do. So in order to be able to allow the DPW legally to plow that section of what is Class 6 road, which it needs to become Class 5. And for the purpose of safety, that's what we want to do, is just reclassify it from 6 to 5.
Ron?
How far is how long?
So it's the length of one lot, and the lots up in that area are about 110, 120 feet in length.
This is something that's driven by the DPW?
We've been plowing it every year because we have to, because we can't turn around in driveways, so we have to get past and get to where we turn around. So I think this is just a legality to...
Yeah, there's no work that has to be done to improve the...
No.
Sorry.
It's just, yeah.
All set? Okay, I'll read it again. See if the village district will vote to reclassify to Class 5 a portion of the Class 6 section of Adelboden Way from the boundary lines of F97 and F98 to the boundary line of lots F98 and F99 to accommodate snow removal. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, this would be the portion if there's any other business. Does anybody have? Okay, Mike?
Okay.
You want to read it?
I got an article, a couple articles I'd like to see. I'd like to see if the voters will vote to rescind the gag order the commissioners installed on Nancy Cole. This vote will not affect the money the VDOE paid to Nancy Cole, which was $10,000. The release of this information in gag order will take effect immediately. That's my motion.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, you want to talk?
Huh?
You want to speak on it?
Okay. So I've been in the village district outside of Gloria, probably the second oldest person I've been here. We never had a gag order before. I mean, and for Nancy to have this is crazy. One commissioner signed it, so I don't know if it's even legal, but this will clarify everything. And the other benefit of this is Nancy, I've talked to Nancy, and if I got elected commissioner, Nancy said that she would help straighten out the office, help work on the office. She can't legally do it now with the gag order in place, but this would help if at her, when she can give time to the village district, let her be able to do this. And that's why I'm ready.
Okay, want to get in writing first of all? The only thing, this is a non-binding article because it was not warned. So basically, if this is voted in favor of, it would be a recommendation to the new Board of Commissioners to address. I've got that's the bottom line. It was, so, now, having said that, do you want to comment before we?
All I want to say is that we were in contact with the district attorney, who, Chris Bolt referred us to Doug Mansfield, who was the employment attorney, that's his field of expertise. The agreement they sent us was a boilerplate contract. We did not add that stipulation in there. They said this is a good idea to have. It's what they provide to anybody who's in a situation where there is that type of an arrangement with an employee. So I don't want anybody to think that any one of the commissioners, whether they're here now or in the past, specifically asked for that to be put in there. Okay, I just want to clarify that was never the intent to specifically make that a condition of the agreement.
So you should be in favor of removing this.
I don't have a problem with it, Mike.
Okay, so the bottom line is, I think the idea is to get a sense of the huge meeting that we had to turn out here to agree with it, and then you'll go forward with that as a commissioner, a board of commissioners. All right, Ron, you had your hand up first.
It's a very simple thing. How we treat people,
Okay.
on the record,
Shouldn't have to be this way.
people who are involved. It's really important. So I think it sends a good message if that.
We were taking the legal advice of the district attorney. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. So, yes.
Larry Sedano in the Life Circle. I just have a question. What is she prohibited from discussing or revealing?
It was basically district business, maybe her relationship with any of the commissioners, finding financing issues. I mean, it was, I mean, she obviously could talk about personal things, but nothing that had specifically to do with what she did as an employee.
And she signed that document with that.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Dinah.
It also includes that she couldn't volunteer for anything.
Right.
She couldn't run for anything.
Couldn't help out in the office,
Couldn't
couldn't
do anything like that. And if it's boilerplate, I still think the commissioners should have used their common sense about this. However, that's water with me, so I support this.
Okay, Mike?
How come one commissioner only signed it? It's not a valid agreement with one commissioner.
There's a lot of things that just the chairman signs on behalf of the commissioners.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if we voted to let that one commissioner, that was something he was responsible for, following up on. I can go back to the minutes if you want me to, but Mike, there's a lot of things. If we say, look, Jay, you're in charge of this project, you're doing the asset management, you signed the document on behalf of the commissioners, we agree to give him that authority, then it's valid if one commissioner signs it.
But only if the other commissioners see the document.
Whether that's stipulated in that condition or not, I don't know. And we did see the contract. Right?
Didn't
So-
agree with it, that's
But we saw it. Okay.
So we're gonna vote as a sense of this meeting, whether this is something that you should definitely pursue in correcting. Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? All those opposed? It's unanimous. And I'm going to give this to you so you can have this.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mike, you have the floor again.
I got one more. To see if the voters will allow Mike Smith to control the water level at the Loon's Nest in the area from May 15th to July 15th. This vote is to allow the VDOE Highway Department to remove boards and install boards per the needs of the Loon's Nest. The removal of the boards will not impede the fire department from doing its job. The loons are an endangered species. This vote is to take effect immediately.
So what are those dates again?
Pardon?
What are the dates again?
May 15th to July 15th. Somebody want to second? I will.
Somebody second. Who was second?
So,
Donna, did you hit that? Second?
so the loons have been here longer than probably all of us. Seems like other commissioner, and we never had a problem before. All of a sudden, 2 years ago, it became a major issue with the level of the water of the loons. There's as many residents that like the loons in here as the people that don't. It seems to me that the LPC this year has pulled their webcam. Why? Politics in the village district. Believe me, that's behind the scenes. I work all the time with the LPC. At my house, I got signs and everything else. And I've never turned anybody away that's wanted to come take pictures of them. They're from here to probably there where they nest every year. They were on the nest the other night. We flooded them out, I think, 2 years ago. The egg went in the water, and the other one, I forget what the other one had. The eagle got the other one. If I remember right. So, I'm not trying to, I can see it from my bedroom window. I get up every morning, I can look right out and look on the nest. All I'm asking is for these 2 months, now if they nest and get out of there the end of June, raise the water level then. It's to benefit the loons, and that's all it is. I'm not getting any benefit out of this, and the village district should be glad that they have them. That's the problem. The village district and the loons have coexisted for years before, and all of a sudden, now, the last 2 years, is a major issue in the LPC. This is the result. People know it. It's hidden behind the scenes. They don't want to come out and say they don't want to do it, and they're going to go to behind their place in Tuftonboro. So, I'm asking for this vote to be, and to take the commissioners out of the politics of this. I can handle this, no problems, and work with the highway department. I will keep the office involved as to the level of the water, up and down, when a board should be removed, because I did that before all these years, and we never had a problem. All of a sudden, the last 2 years, it's become a major issue.
Ron?
Yeah, so since we're in a phase of recommending to the Board of Commissioners a focus, and I think what Mike was saying, this is a focus on, let's revisit the loons and revisit the water level. As you'll be a commissioner shortly, very shortly, and a member of the team. And the real question is, do we want to revisit the water level and the water level management for the purpose of encouraging the loons to nest in lower peak Parch Pond? I think that's really what's driving this. And in that, I'm in total favor of. As a member of the Board of Commissioners, it's up to the Board of Commissioners to jointly work together to figure that out. I'd like to be able to say, Mike, you should do it. You have a lot of experience. But I'm hoping that the Board of Commissioners revisit this and look at it from the standpoint of, if we can make it better for the loons, and it's not painful to the district, why not?
My understanding is there's a policy that you guys put together regarding that. So if the sense of the meeting here is that that policy may need to be readdressed. Paula?
I just want to make, neither here nor there how I feel about this, but a couple statements I would not necessarily agree completely with what Mike stated.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just meant to make, this is not really whether or not I personally agree or disagree, but I think in the interest of representing one statement you had that I necessarily wouldn't agree with, and I've only been involved for about 3 years now, so I don't know what happened before that. I know there's a lot of history. But you said that it's never been a problem up till now. And the first year I remember that I came to these meetings and started going to some town meetings with hearings and whatnot. There is a large, there's a contingent of homeowners or property owners who live on Big P who feel very differently about this. And in their opinion, from what I understand and what I've read, they had sent letters and petition, I don't mean officially petition, but they had come to the Board of Commissioners asking that the water levels not be lowered for this, because they had other reasons. Whether or not they like loons, I don't know. I don't know why. They had their reasons. And what I witnessed, what I recall, was that those pleas and those requests were ignored. So to say that there was no problem before, I don't think is necessarily true. I think there has been a problem, and I think this has become, and it may not have been a problem in the past, but in the last few years that I have been involved, we have a contingent over on Big P who has a different point of view. And that is one of the reasons I believe, from what I've witnessed, this has become a big back and forth. That it's the loons versus the people on Big P. And quite honestly, that doesn't really answer what Mike wants to do, but I do think that should be on the record as being what is driving a lot of this. And my opinion was that for the first year I was involved, I felt that those people's requests were ignored. I went to a commissioners meeting where a letter was read from them and no action was taken and no response was given. So whether you agree or disagree with them, I believe their requests and their opinions should be validated and heard. And I just want to make that statement.
Yeah, go on that.
On my cell phone, I got a letter from the dam, the state of New Hampshire and the dam, also to the LPC. There was meetings held at the first beach. I wasn't invited because it was all of a sudden I'm driving by and I seen people meeting, and then I found out why. The water level on the big pond is higher than the water level going over the dam. The recommendation is, if you want to keep the water level high on the big P, is to build a dam there. That is the recommendation by the state. And that's right here, you're more than welcome to read it.
I know.
People don't want to pay attention to this because it didn't fit their needs.
Well, no, but
That's what happened, wait a minute,
They don't
that's
wanna
what
pay attention to it,
happened
yeah.
with the people on Big P. Because I heard about it, that people didn't like what the state had to say. That's what came out of it.
well, how much, you think the people on Big P are going to pay $1 million to build the dam?
A couple
Oh, a couple $100,000?
It's just a very small little opening.
Jay?
So this issue actually came about when when there was a revision made to the management of the dam. It was passed before the voters here at a public hearing. Let me just show you what the ramifications of that have been. The dam was always classified as low risk by the New Hampshire Department of Safety of Dam Management. It is now high risk.
Hyper risk.
It actually is high risk.
High risk.
High risk, which has caused us, and you heard Paula mention, we're asking for $8,000 to come out of the operating budget this year to create an emergency action plan. That's the requirement now that it's been reclassified. So, has anything changed in the dam? The answer was no. Nothing has changed. But to your point, Mike, people from the state were called up here because there was a little bit of a feud going on. And so the state said, reclassified, now you're going to pay some money. So we have higher costs for our inspections of the dam, and now we have to put $8,000 to put a plan together in case that dam ever fails. Never had to do that. So, but as far as the comment that you made and your proposal, the proposal you made, that you'll be able to manage the level of the dam and it won't affect the firefighting, we will always be able to draft from that dry hydrant. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
And you know what the level is on the concrete, the minimum prescribed by the fire chief?
Jay, I go back to the fact that over the years, I've been here a lot longer than you have. We've never had a problem with the water level there and firefighting. We've never had that problem. And the loons have nested there.
Yeah.
So I can't see why we can't coexist.
Yeah, so,
That's what I'm saying.
okay, so,
I'm not asking to go and take the water level down so there's no water or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to make it so it's a workable solution for the loons, the fire department, and the people until the loons patch up. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to make a major
So Mike,
issue.
two points, please. Two things occurred over this discussion of the dam management and the loons and the fire department. We did not know, nobody knew previously that you technically should not lower the water after October 15th. And that was the standard practice
over 50.
October 15th was to lower the water, and that way it would, be able to accommodate the snow melt in the spring. So the way we were managing our dam was, in effect, in contradiction to what DES required. So that was something we didn't know, that now we have to abide by that. And the second thing is, I don't think we knew that if that water is 6 inches down below that concrete, that the fire department cannot suck water out of that pond. And we never knew that, so that was never taken into consideration. So because there was never a fire at a home in that area in the summertime when the water was low, doesn't mean there's never going to be a problem. So the reason that the water levels were suggested to maintain 4 or 5 inches below the concrete was optimal. 6 is probably the lowest that it should be, so that if there's a fire, and then of course during this whole conversation we were having, the house burnt down on Burn Drive?
Middle Shore.
No.
Oh, the one on Burn.
So a house burnt to the ground on Burn, believe it or not. So we did not realize the impact of low water on the ability of the fire department to suck water out of that pond. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, or that I agree with you or disagree. I'm just saying those two things were never taken into consideration in the past because we didn't know that they were that they had to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
I think the solution here is to lower that dry hydrant at First Beach.
We talked about that.
We asked the fire department if they would go to DES and extend it, not lowering it, but you're extending it further out into the water so that you're deeper water. And that came back, no.
Okay. Paula?
That was a suggestion, and we did follow up on it, and it did come back as not feasible.
The only other thing I would say, I spoke at length also to the Loon Preservation Committee a couple weeks ago. Spent quite a bit of time on the phone with someone there, and have had a lot of correspondence. And I don't think it's fair to say that what they told us isn't true. So, the idea that they told us, and what they stated publicly on their website, was that they moved the loon cam because of proximity to where they are, and because there was also some concern about our loon pair actually successfully nesting this year. That's what they have stated publicly. So for us to sit here, for anyone to sit here and say that that's all made up, it's all about the politics, I don't think it's very fair, and I take them at their word. And that, and unless they want to come and tell us otherwise, I'm going to accept what they have stated on their website publicly out to the public. So but I am in agreement that this policy, once again, has to be revisited. I don't know that I will support that it should definitely be Mike because he has a view of the loon's nest. I think the policy should definitely be revisited. I would support that. But in terms of, I think the board should decide as a group, come to an agreement on what that is. And if they decide, whatever they decide is the best next step, I think they should revisit.
Last time, Mike?
Paula, just to correct what you just said, I do have an email from John Cooley when he came out in the mail that they were worried about. Here's the mail that's normally on there. I have that email right here, if you want to read it. The graded mail that they thought that was not fair.
I'm sorry.
It's May 3rd.
Right.
The email, so that is the pair that's on.
I understand that, but they didn't know that at the time they made the decision to move the camera. So if you read their blog that's on their website, it basically says that the time they made the decision to move the camera, they moved it for 2 reasons. One reason was because of proximity to their location, and the other was because they were concerned about what if we had the actual pair. That at the time, that's why they said they stated publicly that was why they moved it. I accept that. I've not heard otherwise, and I've spoken one-on-one. So I appreciate you may have a different opinion, but I don't agree with that.
Okay, so again, this is a sense of the meeting for the new Board of Commissioners to make change. Any other discussion? Yes.
Yeah, 2 years ago when the Eagle took that baby balloon, I was devastated. Yeah. And at the time, I said to Kathy, why couldn't they put a floating covered nest? Wouldn't that solve the whole problem?
We don't have those. It would solve it, but they won't do it. They don't want
They don't want to do it.
They don't.
And what they're doing now is taking the ends of trees, stuff, putting them up around the nest. So the eagle can't get down on them now.
Okay.
So they've corrected that, and they knocked that out in Minnesota. So, but they want to go all natural, the LPC does. Because they say it's the most successful nesting site in New Hampshire. And they don't want to,
I'm just thinking that if there's a floating nest, then everybody wins.
And that could be another reason they took the camera off. That eagle-
Floating nests do, I can speak, floating nests do work. My brother-in-law has one he puts out every year in Lovewell Pond. It took several years for them to actually take to it, but it does work. But that's a huge lake that is just always deep and fluctuates more than I think any lake that I've been on. I mean, it rains hard in the mountains, it comes down, Lovewell Pond rises by several inches. So it does work, but it does take time for that to happen. Now, are we back to the question now? Because I think we're ready to at least get a sense of this body to move forward with the new Board of Commissioners. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay. So now, are there any other business? Or are we ready to? Yes.
I'd like to apologize to Officer Jimmy Hayford. Jimmy, you got your donuts and I forgot to give them to you at the beginning of the meeting. All right, sorry.
Give something else?
I just have one last thing. I just wanted to say thank you to the commissioners, to Kelly and his team, to Donna. The office is a hard role. There's not enough resource to do the job. There's more demands on you than you care to deal with. And adding personalities to that makes the job more challenging. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you for doing this and sticking with it. And I think this meeting really went very, very well. It exceeded my expectations, and I just wanted to say well done and thank you.
So do I have a motion to adjourn? So move, second. One hand goes up first. A motion to, all right, Mike, and seconded by Ralph. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.